Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Superintendent Effect, a podcast where we highlight great leaders building great communities. Today, I'm so excited to be joined by Dr. Meredith Nadeau, who is the Superintendent of School Administrative Unit number 21, and she'll explain to us what that is. But welcome, Meredith, and thanks for joining us today. So tell us what a school administrative unit means.
Yes. So a school administrative unit essentially means I have multiple districts. So I am here in New Hampshire, on the Seacoast of New Hampshire, and I have 5 small districts with a total of right around 2,000 students, which means I have 5 school boards, plus a joint board that oversees my work and that budgets for our central office services.
Wow, so you have 6 school boards, essentially.
Yes.
How many total school board members do you have?
23.
23. Wow. That's a lot of folks to keep happy.
It is. It is.
Well, you must be doing great work because I know you've been there quite a while, and I've had the opportunity to know you for years and years, and I know that you're a amazing, strong leader, but also extremely innovative and care about kids, and so I'm just excited to get to highlight all of the amazing work that you're doing there in New Hampshire.
Thank you. That's kind. Be forewarned, we are about getting a massive thunderstorm here in New Hampshire right at the moment on the coast. So if it gets really loud or I lose connection, I will jump back on.
Okay, sounds good. So tell me about being on the coast. Are you right there on the water? Is it just beautiful where you are?
We're about a mile, where my office is located here in Hampton is about a mile from the water. So yes, it is a beautiful area. A couple of my districts are considered rural and the others are suburban. We're about an hour from Boston and about an hour and a half from the Lakes region of New Hampshire.
Wow. All right. Well, I want to come visit someday. That sounds amazing. Tell us about you. Tell me about your career and how you've come to be the uh come to be in this position that you chose to have 23 bosses.
Oh, um, so I did not know I wanted to go into education necessarily when I started college, right? I started on a pre-med track and that was fine. And then I took an education class end of my sophomore year. And I was like, okay, I just love this so much. And if I look back, honestly, I was probably should have been thinking about going into education, right? I was that kid I was the oldest grandchild on both sides of my family. So I did a lot of childcare and babysitting and teaching and tutoring. I tutored kids in my neighborhood. I, started a little school, my poor siblings. And anyway, I switched into education as a minor, graduated, and my first job out of college actually was working at a group home with kids with some emotional and behavioral challenges who were separated from their families for a variety of reasons. And then I took my first teaching job. I taught middle school English for several years. And then, I had the experience of having some students who were not able to read as 8th graders. And so I transitioned into special education, got myself some training on how to teach kids to read, and worked as a special educator for several years, and then was encouraged to move into administration, moved into an assistant principal role. And then I served as a K-6 principal for several years. And as our life changed, right, when we had children, I moved into a central office role, thinking that would have more flexibility than that of a school administrator. Not sure that was true, but that was a
More
good
flexibility, but more hours, right?
Yes, different schedule, but still demanding. And I worked as a special education director in a New Hampshire district, and that morphed into also overseeing some curriculum in the humanities. And then my superintendent at that time was leaving and encouraged me to pursue a superintendency. And I was offered the first position I interviewed for and kind of went, wait, how did that happen? But it's been a great experience for me.
Wow. Well, let's talk about reading for a minute. I haven't done this with other superintendents, but with your experience, tell us a little bit about how important it is that kids are learning to read and learning, by 2nd grade and
Sure.
all of those things that we know because we're educators, but
Right.
the world doesn't always know.
Yeah, I think, when I started as a middle school teacher, I didn't understand what early literacy was about, right? I didn't have that background. I hadn't had that training coming into middle school. I was trained as a secondary teacher. Um, and I learned pretty quickly, like, some of these students can't read the materials I'm putting in front of them. So I learned to adapt and be creative. But I realized, like, wow, something's different. And so I spent time, as I said, I transitioned into special education, but I remember Time Magazine had a cover come out about dyslexia and the brain. This was early 90s, mid 90s, I guess, maybe by that point. And I was fascinated. And I thought, okay, right, there's real science here that, there are differences in how people learn and acquire information and in the way that we need to teach it. And so I spent a year with what was called the Wilson Language Program being trained.
I love those. Yeah.
Yeah. So, the science of reading that I think some people are thinking is new today has been around since at least then, when I first learned how to do that work, and have had the opportunity, right, to teach kids who are considered non-readers, right, as late as high school, really how to read, right, through systematic intervention and support. And in my experience, if we use the right tools and strategies, almost everyone can learn to read. And I think we are doing a better job today of employing those techniques in classrooms. I think we were under the false impression that, most people sort of learn to read by happenstance. But we learn, we know better. We know that the majority of kids need systematic phonics instruction and phonemic awareness instruction. That should be paired with access to high quality literature, and exposure to vocabulary and vocabulary development. But yeah, I can't underestimate the importance of it, right? We use that skill throughout our lives. It impacts everything we do. And while there are technology tools that can help us read faster, perhaps if we're not a strong reader or things can be read to us, I don't think it's quite the same as being able to read independently.
Well, and just reading opens the door to everything else. So if there's the transition somewhere between second and third grade or third and fourth grade where kids go from learning to read to reading to learn.
Yeah.
And if you can't do that,
Right.
then they are behind from the get-go and they just stay behind. So thank goodness for people like you and Wilson.
Absolutely.
I have a son with special needs, and reading, continues to be a challenge.
Sure.
And but he did have the opportunity to use Waterford when he was younger, and
Yeah.
and Wilson as he got older, and he can he now can read, but
Right.
still not the way a reader
Oh,
like you or me reads. Still
yeah.
not
He doesn't have that fluency, right? It
that
takes more
enjoyment,
time.
and that, like, his first go-to is not to go to reading. His first
Right.
go-to is to go
Right.
to television or tech or something
Yeah.
to help him with that. And so
And I think we also did a lot of kids, like your son, a disservice, right? By, we didn't do the job of teaching them to read. And then we wrote too many kids off, I think, as, because of their reading challenges as being somehow less intelligent or less capable. And, my experience again is that's not the case, right? They're every bit as intelligent and capable. And as we all have different talents and strengths, but it's on us as the educators to figure out the pathway for children to learn.
right, like, what do they say? If you test a fish on how he climbs a tree, he's gonna fail every time, right? And
Right.
so,
Yeah.
um, and, reading has just literacy and reading has just been such an important part of my career and my life, and it's just something everyone needs. I have a friend who actually was the CEO of a adult literacy program, and to your point, and sometimes maybe the brain's not quite ready to interpret the symbols, but then that comes later. And I'm even noticing that at 29, my son's fluency is higher and higher, and his deeper understanding of the text is higher, and it's
Right.
continuing. When they talk about the plasticity of the brain, ooh, say that word. Um, it still exists,
Exactly.
and so much that we thought before. I mean, I think back to when I went to college, it was between phonics and whole language.
Right.
And so and I was sure that it was all about whole language. I was just sure that you know this my first teacher was about to retire. My first cooperating teacher was about to retire, and the school was a whole language school, and she would close her door and teach phonics. And I remember going to my principal at the time and saying, I just don't think I'm learning much here because, Mrs. Smith, that wasn't her name, but Mrs. Smith is just closing the door and teaching phonics. She doesn't even think about whole language. And my principal goes, and simmer down. You're going to learn a lot from that teacher.
Yeah.
And that principal ended up being our state superintendent for about 20 years.
Wow.
Plus that teacher taught me everything I know about phonics and phonemic awareness, which has served me my entire life. So
Sure.
anyway, just such an important thing. And how important is it that the superintendent in a district has the has the academic knowledge? And not to say that most superintendents have the academic knowledge, but for you to have been a special ed teacher and a reading teacher and all of those things, like you get why it's so important. So
I do, and I'm grateful for that because I think it helps me. It gives me a level of credibility, right, when I talk about it, and when I think about the windows. Yes, obviously we can continue to learn to read and be better at it throughout the course of our lives. But you mentioned your experience with Waterford. We know that early learning window is so critical for children. So really doing the work, right, to provide the tools and the resources to families and children, children being read to at home, all of those pieces are so important for the development of those skills later.
yeah. So everybody read at home with your child. Read at home.
Please
Read at home with your child. Read at home with your grandkids. Read at home with your neighbors. Just whatever it takes, because it is. And there's the 30 million word gap
That's right.
That by second grade, the difference of one child to another could be that one child has had 30 million words written. They've been exposed to 30 million words through reading to them, talking to them, seeing text on the fridge, just all those things, versus another child who might have, 1,000 words or 3,000 words or something. It's so important. Anyway, we digress on reading, but I think it's important, and it's a topic I haven't addressed in the Superintendent Effect. So I was excited to get to talk reading for a while. Tell us about your experience. I know you do a lot of work at the state level with data and AI. Tell us about what's happening in that right now.
Well, it changes moment to moment, right? The work in AI changes almost daily, of course. We have a couple of students within our district who are going to be part of a nationwide effort this summer for students to be involved in writing some policy around use of AI and, the ethical use of AI. And I would say, that I think, again, as an educator, is probably one of the biggest pieces I'm concerned about is, it's a tool like all other tools. People are going to use it. We want to teach our students how to use it safely and responsibly, to acknowledge when they're using it, to have them, understand the implications, to be thoughtful about the information that it provides them, because we know it isn't foolproof. It's better, but it's not foolproof. And so we are thinking deeply about, what does the use of AI look like when children are young, right up through, as some are getting ready to go off to college or finishing high school and being ready to enter career. In terms of data use, I think, I mean, we use data for everything, right? We're using data to think about what literacy strategies are effective for our students. And, as we make decisions about programs, we're guided by data in, our management of behavior. So again, I think that's another key skill as I think about workforce needs, right? Is having students understand use of data, management of data, manipulating data. I think it's more important than calculus, right? Is to have an understanding of data use and statistics.
Well, and you think about it, like when we went to college, we took statistics classes that were never introduced to me in high school.
Right.
And now, middle school kids are doing the statistics we were doing at the college level before, because because data is such a prevalent thing in everything that we do. Everybody's asking for data and what does the data show? And
Yeah.
I do still believe in gut a little bit, but
I do too. And I think you can't be guided by just one piece of data, right? Particularly as you're making decisions about people. You need to look at multiple sources, as we think about what's best for students or what students' needs are. Any of us can have an off day or, right, difficulty with a particular type of assessment. So looking at multiple sources of data to be able to triangulate, I guess, for lack of a better term, um, the conclusions that we're drawing, the decisions that we're making is really important.
yeah, I agree. Looking at multiple forms is the most important thing. I know that supporting mental health in your district's been important. Tell us a little bit about that journey and where you are today with it.
Yeah, so I started here late pandemic. Our schools had reopened. However, we were seeing the effects of, for a lot of children and families coming out of that time period, right? It was really challenging. And we pulled together my very first year here, a mental health panel. Students felt that was an important topic. We brought some people together and kind of opened a dialogue about that. Um, we have limited professional development days, as I think is true in most school districts. But one of them every year is totally focused around mental health. And we get feedback from staff around what that should look like. That's not to say it's the only time we talk about mental health, but it's important enough in our limited PD full days across our multiple districts that we devote a day to focusing on mental health. We put in place parent coaching through the Cook Center. We have seen growth in that. I think we recognize that, our students aren't successful without the support of their families. And so that was really important to us to find a way to provide some additional support because we know that there is limited access to mental health providers around this country. There's a great shortage of those providers. So finding some ways to give parents quick, reliable access to someone who can help them talk through challenges that they may be facing as parents was really important to us. We also have access to all the Parent Guidance Center resources on our website. We were able, in partnership with a local organization, and we have a nonprofit that's called Rising Tides for our Seacoast work here that works with that nonprofit, and we've been able to sustain a social worker who works across the SAU, providing support to families, in addition to good mental health teams in all of our schools. Um, my high school has right around 1,000 kids. We have 5 full-time counselors, 2 full-time social workers, a full-time substance abuse counselor. We partner with our area agency for mental health to have a clinician who's on site multiple days a week to just ease that access for students and families. It's something that's really important to us and is really embedded in our day-to-day practices.
In your culture. Yeah, I love it. So when you devote that, that full day, do you bring your whole staff together for that or do you do separate? Yeah, that's
Yeah,
cool.
we bring everybody together. And I mean, there are often different sessions that people can choose to attend, but we start every one of those with everyone together.
But that really does speak because you probably have less than 5 days of professional development in the year.
But
Do you still have your student panel that's working on mental health?
I do. I
Oh,
do.
good.
So we actually have students at our high school who are trained by NAMI, and they provide peer training around mental health and suicidality. And so they actually do outreach to our middle schools as well on that topic, and they are resources in the school. They work with directly with one of our social workers as their advisor. And then I have a student leadership team that has, for a couple of years, identified mental health as a priority.
Oh, that's wonderful. So how many years have you been there in this role? 5, you said?
About fifth. Yep.
Yeah. In your 5 years, what's one of the things you're just really, really proud of, an innovation or something
I think some of it is less, right, individual relationships that you form and create, and so for me, those are typically, relationships with families when a student is struggling or relationships with a student who's struggling, and seeing them kinda get to the other side, whether that's graduation or, persisting through, some of those difficult challenges. So that's the first thing that comes to mind is the people part. In terms of the school piece, I think one of the things we're really proud of is, building pathways for students to graduation, which may not, look the same. We have, in New Hampshire what are called extended learning opportunities, which are opportunities sort of like, basically a self-study sort of, but you're working with a faculty mentor, in something that you're really passionate about. So, some examples, this year we have a small group of students who are working with the local wastewater treatment plant, to look at wastewater solutions because the storage is not going to last. And so they're, applying some science knowledge to better understand, solutions and pitch some ideas around that. We had another student this year who earned her drone pilot's license.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
Was able to, connect with a drone pilot who lives in another state, but was willing to offer some hours of mentorship, to her and worked with her. There's a whole course she had to take, but we figured that out. We had a young woman who worked with local emergency response to put together sort of a welfare check system for seniors. So that there's she built out the system, advertised it to families, got it up and running, and has now sort of handed that off because she's graduating in a couple weeks to the community. We have students who have gone and done student teaching experiences, in some of our sending schools. So, it's really dependent upon the creativity and interests of students. We have, also a great partner in our local career and technical education center. And, there are a variety of pathways for students there. We have students who get hired out of high school, with credentials as welders, and had a presentation from a young woman yesterday who is, interested. She's been pursuing biomedical science, but she wants to ultimately be a forensic specialist. And she was just talking about like this system that she was part of in a competition. We have a regional partner called Army that's located in Manchester, New Hampshire, that does biofabrication. So they do sort of organ and tissue, growth. And so she did research into, growth agents and is produced this, phenomenal project. She's going to the finals on Thursday, around basically creating a new thalamus.
Wow.
Well, yeah.
I told everybody that you were an innovative leader. So we
Well,
started out talking about reading that's so basic to all of this innovation and
but I'm not the innovator. It's the students who are the innovators, right?
but you're allowing the innovation to take place. Not allowing, but you're encouraging the innovation to take place. And I think that's important. And don't you think that's the joy of being in a district your size, in an area your size?
I do, right? Because I get to know so many of those individual stories, right? And hear from students directly, but also, we have such a gift in being able to find partners, in our community and surrounding area.
Oh, I mean, I I'm always amazed by what our youth are accomplishing and just the jobs that they are creating for themselves or that they know about that, we just didn't know. So that's exciting. Just a couple of quick last questions.
Sure.
Um, what's something most people don't know about you?
um, I spent 15 years, when I was teaching into, my principalship until I had my second child, volunteering as an EMT, in my local community. So I actually still have the certification, but I haven't practiced in a bit. But I feel like that training and those skills are something you wouldn't assume come in handy as a superintendent, but I can tell you it helps.
I bet it has. I bet it has. All right, last question.
Sure.
If you could advise yourself as a brand new superintendent or advise another superintendent who's maybe just starting, What's something you tell them?
Whew, okay. You don't have to do it all at once, right? I think that's the biggest piece, right? It takes time to build relationships and gain buy-in when you're looking to do systemic change. And I think when you're new to that, you're so full of ideas and enthusiasm, and you have, for all the right reasons, you want to move rapidly. And sometimes that's faster than your system is ready to move. So don't lose the urgency, but develop the relationships to make sure you're going to be successful and sustain change.
Oh, I think that's great advice. Is there anything else you want to add or talk about?
Gosh. No, I mean, I'm grateful to have known you for the years that I have and the great work that you've done. I am grateful to the Cook Center for the work that they're doing, and the changes that they are making, and um, I guess, the country, right, around support for mental health and resources for kids and families.
Well, thank you. And thanks for your support in that too and bringing that to your families. And New Hampshire is very lucky to have you being one of their strong leaders, building their strong communities. So thank you so much for everything that you do, Meredith. And
Thank you.
have a phenomenal summer as it's coming up
Thank
on us pretty quickly.
Yes, it is coming very quickly. My youngest will graduate from high school in a couple of weeks, and that
Oh, wow. That's a bittersweet moment, isn't it?
it is. It is. Yeah. But again, I think the fact that I've had kids in school, most of the time I've been a superintendent, has also been a gift, right? Because it keeps me very connected to what's important for learning.
Well, good. Well, good luck to him or her. Who is it that's graduating?
Her. Yep. I have 2 daughters.
Okay. All right. Well, good luck to both of them and to you.
I
Thanks
guess.
so much for joining us.
Okay. Take care.